Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome once again to Career Expert Roundtable, where we answer your questions together. I am Bill, the company's expert, and as always, joining me is Abby from Life Work Balance. How you doing, Abby?
I'm doing well, Bill. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
This is a live stream. This is going out live, not only on my YouTube channel, not only on Abby's YouTube channel, and Abby's Twitch
Yep.
channel, but it's also going out, I believe, on my second YouTube channel today as like just a novelty. So wherever you are watching this, you should see a chat box somewhere near our video feed, depending on what device you're on. Get into the chat and ask questions because we are here to answer your questions. Anything to do with careers, job search, anything like that, right? That's
Yep. Yep.
maybe even more topics too. I'm not sure.
Yes. And if you are joining from Bill's stream, you might see some comments from other people, like from other people who are joining from my stream. But it's my understanding that they kind of separate the comments. So we do our best to keep the comment that we're kind of talking on, the question that comes up on the screen so that nobody gets lost.
Absolutely. And just to show what that looks like, and it's rare I get a chance to show off my command of technology, but here is the first comment from Tommy D says, "Hey, Bill." Hey, Tommy. So that's what we're here. We're here purely to answer your questions, anything that you've been wondering about or struggling with when it comes to job search. There's actually been some, at least from my perspective up here in Canada, there's been interesting information coming out of the United States on the state of the job market these days. It seems like there was some questioning of that a couple of months ago, and then it seems like we're revisiting that now, I think.
Yes.
I don't know
So,
if
and
you.
do you mean that it's like slowing down or speeding up?
Yeah, well, they did that. There was some kind of a revision of that official job report from the U.S., right?
Mhm.
And I know that seems to have caused a bit of a stir. So I'm not sure if we didn't talk about this ahead of time. So I don't know if you have any knowledge or opinion or any insight into that, Abby. But I thought I'd just start with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that, the job market and if it's up or if it's down is always an evolving conversation. There will
Yeah,
be times when it's down, there will be times when it's up. What it really comes down to is if you are applying to jobs actively anytime, you should treat it as you would any other situation, regardless of if the market is up or if the market is down. If the market is down, then you just know that you might have some situations where you may have to apply more often or more frequently, or you have to have more interviews than if the job market is up. If the job market is up, there might be more opportunities for you. So the job search will be faster. But really, it doesn't matter what the experts are saying of if the job market is up or down, or if it's a high hiring time or low or slow hiring time. Treat it the same for regardless of what you're doing. So engage in some networking, make sure your resume and your cover letters are up to date and you're tailoring them for the job. Communicate with people, whether it's from that networking perspective or following up after an interview, thanking the recruiter, thanking the hiring manager, the interviewers that you're interacting with. Your strategy overall shouldn't change drastically
yeah,
regarding what those reports say or don't say.
yeah. I agree, and I just think it's interesting because earlier this year, I mean, people have been talking about fake jobs a lot lately. Like that seems to be a topic that keeps coming up over and over again,
Yeah.
and that compounded with some of the stuff we were hearing earlier this year, where companies are, posting jobs, but it's kind of up in the air whether those jobs are actually real. They're actually filling them. You
Mhm.
know, there was kind of sort of anecdotal talk of that, and then now it seems that there's some stuff happening in official job numbers and for the labor market and stuff like that. But I agree with you. I think that regardless of what the numbers are, like sort of month to month, people should be doing the same strategy. They should be doing the same things, right, to put yourself forward. So that's what's
Yeah.
key.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that when it comes to the job search, it's very easy to not job search when you're feeling comfortable in your position. And that's actually the best time to job search.
Yeah,
So, most people who are probably watching are job searching because they don't like their boss or they don't like their coworkers or they're feeling burned out and are in this kind of emergent job search situation. But the best time and most effective time to job search is when you're happy and comfortable in your job, because then you're not
Absolutely.
pressured to take the first thing that's offered to you. You don't feel like you have to leave or that there are no other options. You have employment, so you can kind of be flexible with when you are job searching and how you're job searching, and networking. So for those of you who might be in that emergent job search situation, that's okay. There's a lot of other people who are in that same situation as you. And know that once you get that next job, you want to keep your options open and you want to keep job searching just for your own professional development. Don't get rusty with your interview techniques. See what opportunities might become available by continuing to job search for something bigger and better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people's experience job searching is when you're desperate or when you like really need something and it's a big deal. Uh, I agree with kind of what you're saying that a lot of people, it's less common to be job searching when technically you don't need to, right?
Mhm.
It's like, why would you do it? You're like a glutton for punishment. You're going to indulge in this kind of torturous, kind of
Why force
unpleasant
yourself
thing.
to interview if you don't have to?
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of people don't enjoy, uh, sending in applications or getting rejection emails or, doing job interview stuff. It's not particularly fun, so people don't choose to do it. But it would be a good experience for a lot of people to do it, you know, simply because you're coming at it from a position of power. You've already got something, you don't need this. This is kind of like a bonus if they're going to offer you something above and beyond, what you have now, or there's new and exciting opportunities, that you could tap into. So it's something to consider. Anyway, we've got a question here from, I'll put this up on the screen here from Ashlyn. Would it negatively impact my future job prospects if I accept a position that I am way overqualified for? Been searching for a long time, getting anxious and thinking I should just lower the bar. Do you want to take a stab at that one, Abby?
Yeah. So it depends. It depends on kind of what you want to do next. If you are currently unemployed and you need a job, I think this might be a great opportunity to continue to build your skills, even though you are overqualified for it. At the same time, if you're currently employed and this is something that was offered to you and you're kind of feeling like you need to get out of your current position, I'd evaluate, do you really need to get out of it now? So that doesn't answer your question. It's a like ultimately, very muddy question or muddy answer. It's up to you. But I would say that if you are way overqualified for it and you are unemployed or you're really struggling to get a job, take it. If you are
Absolutely.
currently employed, things are not great, they could be better, it's bearable, then keep searching for something that is a closer match to your qualifications, because I wouldn't say that it is going to necessarily set you back, but it could delay your overall success. If you are going to essentially take a step back or a position that is two positions below what you currently have, you have to overcome that, I guess, gap in more recent experience for the next promotion. What do you think, Bill?
Well, it depends on what your plan is. Like some people are just taking a job because they need a job. You know what I mean? Like there's no real overarching career plan. And, that works fine for some people. Whatever opportunities you see in front of you, you could decide to take. And it keeps things interesting and fresh too. Other people, it's a bit more strategic. They've got a sort of career plan in terms of a progression of jobs that they'd like to have. And so they might have an intuitive sense of like, okay, I'm in this role here. Now, based on the fact that I want to end up here, I know that a common way of getting there is to then step into this position. So I'm specifically looking for that. So I don't really want to deviate from that really and go off unless like I have no other choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and another consideration is if you are currently employed and your current organization is very flat, there's not a lot of career growth, you may actually progress faster in an organization that has, very clear standards to promote if you move and then kind of downgrade, so to speak, your position into that higher growth organization. So it really depends. I mean, Ashlyn, it looks like you've been job searching for a long time. You're getting anxious. You're starting to think that you should set the bar lower. I'm unclear if you are currently employed versus not. I think that is like your first decision. If you're currently employed, see if you can wait it out a little bit longer to find something that's a closer fit to what you're wanting to do from that long-term perspective. If you are unemployed and you just need something, then yes, take what you can get for the short term and continue to apply to jobs that might be a better fit for your qualifications.
Absolutely. And just a side note, what might be useful for some people is if you do have an idea of like some role, like you have an ambition, like I would like to be in this role specifically, doing this thing. LinkedIn is a great tool from that. If you do people searches in LinkedIn, go and do a people search in like your hometown or wherever you would consider getting a job, like across your country or whatever you'd be open to, and enter in that position. And it's a people search, so the results are going to be individuals. Go look at the individuals and look at a bunch of these people, because the people that come up as the results presumably will be people that are either in that role themselves now or they've previously been in that role. And you can look at their profile. You can look at like how they got up into that role. Did they spend 10 years off doing this thing here to kind of then move into that role, whatever it is. So you get an idea. If you look at a lot of different people that have ended up in that position, you have an idea of like, okay, this is kind of a standard career progression into that role. So therefore, I know more strategically what my next jobs should be if I want to follow that same progression and end up in that role. So that can give you an idea of like, the types of things you would need to do rather than just sort of stumbling around in the dark, kind of thing. So that's an option for some people.
Yeah, and Ashley clarified that they're not currently employed.
Mm.
And so that does make it a little bit more of a like emergent situation. You want to find employment sooner rather than later. I think there is a hesitation on employers to hire someone who is overqualified for a position because they want people to stay in the role for a long time. And I guess stay in the role is not necessarily the right way to put it, but stay with the organization for a long time. So if you are overqualified and it's very clear that you're overqualified, they might choose not to move forward with you because they're worried that you will accept the job and then move on. And so you would want to find an organization that, has opportunities that just might not be as readily available for your qualified position that you may be able to grow into quickly. So there's a lot of dynamics in this situation. There's a lot of things to consider. Bare minimum, if you need a job, find a position that will give you what you need to survive, and then continue to work either within that organization internally. There we go. Or with an external organization going through their recruitment process to get a job that's a better fit for you.
Absolutely. We have this one here. Danielle Jones says, hello, Bill and Abby. How long does it take for the hiring manager or HR to follow up with you after an interview? I've been waiting for 2 weeks now.
Ooh, this is a really common question. And unfortunately, there's no straight answer. I'm not going to say everyone will follow up with you by this date. It depends on the type of organization that you have applied to. It depends on their hiring timeline, which is sometimes not very clear. And it also depends on how early in the process it is. So federal jobs in the United States, you might be waiting months to hear back as they kind of go through the process. And maybe they have people who are higher on the priority list and they have to do certain checks on them. And then they come back to you. There's months could be that way. Other organizations might need to fill this position yesterday. And so they will get back to you as soon as possible. I would say 2 weeks is on the long end. And so if you have followed up with the hiring manager or HR immediately after the interview, you heard back from them, and then it was kind of crickets after that, I think it's perfectly acceptable to send an additional follow-up email. One thing to consider when you are applying to jobs is that you do not want to put all of your eggs into one basket with a position. Even if it's your dream job with your dream organization, you want to continue to apply and continue to interview with other organizations so that you're not just waiting on this one to work out or not work out. So follow up with HR or the interviewer or the recruiter, whoever your contact is, just to check in, say, I had my interview on this date. I haven't heard anything about next steps, so I wanted to follow up and see, if you have an idea of when I might hear back or what those next steps might look like, and then go from there. But continue to apply and interview with other jobs and positions, and don't wait on this one.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say about this is I know this is easier said than done for a lot of people, but what I'd recommend for people is to try and get into a mentality where, you apply and then you're no longer dwelling and thinking about that role, like what, are they going to get back to me today or, maybe tomorrow, or what can they be thinking? What could they be doing right about now? You just sort of let it go. You get into the habit of like applying and then moving on, move your focus mentally to new opportunities that you're now going to try and find and pursue, and have that like occupy your thoughts rather than always looking back, and sort of playing an anxiety game with yourself, because they haven't responded within 2 days or something like that. And, you're starting to feel depressed about it or something. It's more productive in terms of, increasing their likelihood of getting employed sooner. And it's also better for your mental health to be looking forward, because it's very hopeful, very like, ooh, I can apply for this and I could like maybe, put myself forward for that. It's a much more positive thing rather than thinking, oh, why haven't they contacted me? It's a very, very negative kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, for those reasons, I would say try to cultivate that as much as possible. I think it will help.
I agree. Well, I think that, if you can kind of disconnect yourself from the job search process, which is hard to do because most of the time we're looking for a job with an organization that we really connect with, where we believe in the, organization's values, mission, vision, et cetera. And that's ultimately what sets us up to have a pretty fulfilling job and career. So you don't necessarily want to just dissociate from it completely, but at the same time, you want to treat it like a transaction. So I recommend having like a spreadsheet where you just list all of the, organizations that you apply to, the job title that you apply to, the URL for the job posting, and kind of your status. And then you move on and you wait for that. And maybe you have then a system where you check your email or you follow up with someone if you have a contact after a week of applying, or when you know the close date is, you follow up the day after, something like that. So make it a very like systematic process so that it's a little bit easier to take a step back and away from the application process. So you don't get too invested and then have to deal with disappointment after disappointment with each time that you either hear nothing or that you might hear no. The chances are you're going to hear no and you'll hear nothing a lot more often than you hear something. From a recruiter and hiring manager perspective, if I'm hiring for a single position, the person who we connect with the most during the interview process is probably going to get the most communication. Then it dwindles as you get further down that list. So it makes sense. It's unfortunate, but I don't have time as a recruiter to have constant communication with 20 applicants for one job and 20 applicants for another job. And my caseload as a recruiter might be 6 or 7 or 10 or 15 different jobs that I'm recruiting for. So try not to take it personally. Again, much easier said than done. Treat your job search like a transaction. You apply and then you move on. And then you might check in and then you don't worry about it.
Yeah. Transaction, not relationship. I think that's the great way of looking at it. Rourke Ponce says, I was able to use the practice questions, end of interview questions, and even a hesitation question at an interview last week. I felt really good about the interview. Am I supposed to hear back soon? Well, that's kind of a variant of what we were just sort of talking about.
And it looks like Rourke's question also continues, like not the next comment, but the comment after.
Oh, here we go. Yep. Mm-hmm. How can I best work on how I physically present myself? I feel that when I smile, it comes across creepy, to be honest. Well, as long as you're not leering at people, that's kind of the thing. Go on Google or whatever and go to the image search and Google like leering, and do the opposite of what you see there, Yeah, exactly. That's where you look at someone like a pervert or something. It's like, you don't want to be doing that. I know this sounds silly, but you may want to actually practice smiling in front of a mirror. I know that sounds silly. It's also self-evident, but it is important, right? If you fear that every time you smile, you become off-putting in some way, and so you don't smile or something, that might be a real hindrance when you're trying to make a first impression when you meet someone. So it is worth putting a little bit of effort to actually pay attention to cosmetic things like that, to make sure that you're not sort of like hurting your chances for something so silly. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, at first, Rourke, I know you and I have kind of communicated offline for a couple of weeks, which is really good. So I'm so glad to hear that you are getting those interviews and you're feeling good about your interviews. So congrats on that. When it comes to presenting yourself physically, there is the virtual appearance. So if you're doing Zoom interviews, and then there's the in-person. And so what I would recommend doing is, if you have someone who would be willing to, create a free Zoom account, you can create a free one as well. You can record your mock interview essentially with them, and you can then watch your body language to see how creepy it looks, or if it just feels creepy, but it's not creepy at all. You can get their feedback. Hopefully they'll be honest with you and they don't just not want to hurt your feelings. So they tell you good things just because they don't want to hurt your feelings, but hopefully they're honest with
You
you.
want somebody that's going to give it to you straight. Yeah.
In a kind, compassionate way, but also not completely make you feel like
In a way like that, but also not. That's the key. Yes.
So, get a free Zoom account, get the other person a free Zoom account, record yourself, and then you can see yourself virtually. If your interviews are in person, then same thing. Maybe you have a close friend or family member that you can, just have do a practice interview, and you can set your phone up and record yourself from their perspective, and then watch yourself back to kind of get some data on your physical body language and what you look like. We are very harsh on ourselves. Most of us don't like to hear our own voice. Most of us don't like looking at ourselves. Sometimes the mirror image of a video of us feels weird. So try to get someone else's perspective too. And if you're in the United States, again, I know we've talked about this before on past streams, but if you're in the United States, there are workforce centers that are through our local governments that are free for you to use. So you could potentially go to your workforce center. They might be willing to conduct a mock interview with you. They'll also be able to look over your application materials and give you some job search tips. So that might be another resource of someone who hopefully can give you relatively objective feedback, because they're not worried about hurting your feelings because they know you too well. But in most cases, we are so harsh on ourselves. We might feel like we're being creepy and we're overdoing it, but in reality, we're just fine.
And I'm not sure if this is kind of directly related to what you're talking about, but I found that like the whole smiling thing and stuff, it's all part and parcel of like personal charisma,
Yeah.
And speaking for myself, you want to talk about smiling, it's like I'm not one of those people that smiles and like bears like all their teeth. I kind of just sort of grin, just kind of looking pleasant, instead of like looking kind of severe, at people, just sort of looking pleasant and approachable. And that may manifest itself as like having a bit of a grin, but that's it. You just look pleasant, but you're not actually like going up and like, smiling, ding, getting blinded by the shine off this person's smile, so it varies by person, and that's fine. You don't have to necessarily do something a standard way, as long as you're conveying, you're pleasant, you're approachable, you're happy to be there, you're happy to meet someone. And it goes part and parcel with knowing what to say, like when you greet people and things like that. And I think that if you sort of, maybe your smiling isn't like, the thing that you focus on, but people still get the vibe that, you're pleasant, you're someone they can come up to and talk, and, it'll be a pleasant encounter. That's the main thing. And you make a good impression when you first meet people.
And all of these body language tips are also very cultural based. If I am in the United States, the cultural norms might be very different from if I am in Asia. So there are cultural norms that you kind of have to learn, not only from a like larger country cultural perspective, but even from an organizational perspective. I've worked with someone who is trying to become an accountant, and they are an accountant. They're trying to get a new job in their accounting industry. And they're very friendly and outgoing, which is a little bit different from your stereotypical accountant who is like cool, calm, collected, maybe a little bit more private, doesn't want to share their personal information. And so we also have to recognize how
dweeb. Yeah.
yeah, we also have to recognize how our way of existing in the world might be putting the interviewers off because it's stressing them out. It's not what they're used to. It's not their norm. And so it doesn't mean you have to pretend to be someone you're not. It just means that you want to read the room. You want to maybe kind of understand if it's an in-person interview, if everyone comes in and they have their, collars buttoned up all the way and they're all very dressed professionally and they get down to business right away asking questions and there's no small talk, then you can match them where they're at. If they're dressed a little bit more casually and there's lots of laughing and smiling and talking about the weather at the beginning, then you might have a little bit different way of approaching that type of interview. So there's no way to fully prepare for that until you're in the moment and you can see the people in front of you and kind of get a feel for how they're going to interact with you.
Just go and rent a selection of Hollywood mafia, mobster type movies, and base your presentation on that. The hey, how you doing? Kind of Italian type. Yes, that's the rule of thumb if you're trying to get to grips with the American culture. As not an American myself, I feel that that's the right approach.
Well, we've had a couple of comments come through when it comes to like the body language comments.
Okay.
Said,
we're going to get to Tina's in a moment here.
Tina's, yeah. Guy says, my non-smiling face is scary, but I can't smile all times. So like our resting face might indicate that to others, even though it's not necessarily the way we're feeling, that we're upset or we're angry or we're too serious. So, maybe you don't grin the entire time, but maybe you have like a slight smile while you're telling a story, or you're nodding and smiling while someone is like just a, closed-lipped smile. There are things that we can do to tone back maybe our resting faces rather than intimidating them with our anger, even though there's no anger.
That's awesome. The mask comes off and they see your natural resting face and it's like, hoi!
Well, Ashlyn also said, I have to hide my camera too on Zoom because it's too distracting for me to see myself. Absolutely. Like that is one of the things I actually recommend doing when you're in a virtual interview is take like a tiny sticky note and put it over the camera display of yourself, because we're not used to seeing ourselves when we talk in most cases. So we then get really focused on like looking at that little square in the bottom corner. And that's very obvious to the interviewers that you're not looking at them. And then we can be like, wait a second, do I have like something on my face? And then that can get us completely off kilter. So definitely try to cover up your camera view if you're doing a virtual interview.
Also remember, I agree wholeheartedly with what Abby's just said. You can put the little sticky over your video feed of what you look like if you're on a video call, because that might make you nervous or whatever. But, over the long term, I would say, part of public speaking skills, presentation skills, interpersonal skills is being comfortable with what you look like, and things like this. And as you go through life, we tend to generally approach that. Like, we get more and more comfortable with ourselves. It's when we're in our 20s or whatever that, that kind of has its peak. Ironically, I think we look best in our 20s, but we're the most insecure. We'll figure that one out anyway. But getting used to like how you sound, how you look on camera, that's a good thing. So don't shy away from it, like always, and take comfort in the fact that, like, if you think of like historical personages, people that you've all heard of, a lot of, people that have done great things, famous politicians, whatever, some of these people are really, really not good looking. You know what I mean? But that's okay, because nobody notices that, because you just see them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you could remember that principle applies to you too. So whatever your insecurities might be about how you look or whatever you feel, you're self-conscious about things. Remember, like people don't notice that. Everybody's got their own character. Everybody's individual. Yep. And that's okay. And no one really sees the fact that you're insecure about this or that or whatever. So just take a bit of comfort in that and don't shy away from it forever.
Agreed.
Let's go back. We had was it Tina's, like,
yep,
Tina's been waiting a while. Mm-hmm. Tina says, once I had reached 52. Oh, you young whippersnapper, you. My bosses started nitpicking on me. I did well for 2 years. Year 3, I lost my job and had to move back home in another state, still applying for jobs. Yeah, that's kind of a bit challenging, I imagine, when that happens to you.
Yeah.
Um, when you say nitpicking, do you, I'm trying to detect an undercurrent of, do you suspect that they were trying to eliminate you and try to find some supposed excuse for doing that?
Mhm.
Is that kind of what I think is going on here, possibly?
Yeah. And it sounds like after, 2 years of kind of getting like, oh, well, this isn't happening and this isn't happening, that they maybe came up with a reason to let you go because you weren't
Yeah,
meeting expectations. And so if you are experiencing that sort of situation, regardless of your age, it's always great to revisit your expectations with your boss and your job description, and making sure that your responsibilities and the things that are key parts of your role are not only clear for you, but also clear for the person that is responsible for you from a managerial perspective. And it doesn't necessarily feel the most comfortable to have those conversations sometimes, but it's always better to have clarity and like clear communication on those expectations, to say we're on the same page, so that you don't get blindsided by getting let go or getting fired or getting pulled into a room to be put on a performance improvement plan. So always, if you start to feel like there may be some expectations that you're unaware of, call it out, and not in a abrasive way necessarily, but just say like, hey, I'm feeling like maybe you're wanting something more from me that I'm not aware of. Let's talk about what my expectations are. Let's look at my workload. Maybe you can help me prioritize. Um, Having more conversation about it is always better.
yeah, I agree. And also having, I mean, not to always sound like a broken record saying this, but like having an awareness of what's going on out in the real world. And to say it again, my favorite tool for doing that is LinkedIn, and being able to do searches for certain things, and that can give you real world data on like what is going on out there, what's normal. So if you're concerned that, oh no, I might be a little old for the role that I'm in, or I might be perceived as that, and that might be a concern, you can find out if that's definitely what's actually going on average, or it's really not. You know what I mean? It might be a perception of yours or your boss's that could be incorrect.
Yes. Yeah. When I think talking to our bosses always feels stressful, and especially when it's about performance, but it is always much, people tend to feel much more comfortable when they know what to expect and what is expected of them. And so if you are not having regular check-ins with your direct supervisor, try to change that. Your supervisor might be overseeing 10 different people and they may not have time to meet with you each week, and each week might be overkill. But having a check-in, every 2 weeks or once a month, to talk about the things that are going well for you, your projects, the um, things that they have expectations for you regarding those projects. All of that is a great way to kind of keep a constant pulse on how you're doing. And it also gives you an opportunity to ask for feedback rather than just saying, like, do you have any feedback for me? Say, a more specific type of question, like, based on the outcome of this project, do you have a way that I might have been able to improve my communication? Or, it seems like we could have gotten this higher percentage of sales. What ideas do you have for me to help to get that next time? So be very specific with the type of feedback that you request, but it's hard to do that if you're not regularly meeting with your supervisor and you don't have a good relationship with them. So try to have a relatively regular check-in with the person who is directly supervising you, so that you have a pulse on how you're doing, so that you aren't blindsided with any failures or perceived lack of meeting expectations or things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think, I mean, obviously everybody's situation varies, but I would say just across the board, a good idea would to attempt to do this once a month.
Mhm.
And basically just sort of go up to your boss or your supervisor and say, listen, like you got a moment, just make sure it's okay to talk to them. And, hopefully they say yes. If they say no, then you reschedule it. But you got a moment, they say sure. And you say like, listen, I just wanted to check in. So how am I doing? Is there something that, I'm doing that you would prefer I do differently? I'm just wondering, do you have any any other suggestions?
Mhm.
This kind of thing, just sort of a general type thing. And that serves so many different purposes. First of all, it signals a lot of great things about you. You care about your job. You care about doing well. You're trying to do a good job. You respect your supervisor. Assuming, of course, if they give you suggestions, you don't just make a point to completely ignore them. Like, you actually try. I had a coworker that did that. They'd always ask, "So what do you think I should do?" And then they would like intentionally go and do the opposite of what I said every single time. But like it signals so many great things about you, which will usually result in good things happening for you. Put it this way, like, you won't be the first person kicked out the door if they have to downsize or anything, and they'll regard you more favorably. Secondly, it intrinsically improves your performance, because maybe there's like little things that your boss or your supervisor may feel like, I wish they would do this or that, but it's not important enough for them to come up to you and make a huge big deal out of it, but they kind of wish you would do things. So this is a platform for them to say, oh, well, since you asked, I was wondering, would you be able to maybe make this change, or something like that? And you say, like, not a problem, so so there's a lot of advantages in doing this, and like across the board. So it's a great suggestion for people.
Yeah, well, and if you feel a little bit worried about asking directly for feedback, I've found that you actually can get more effective responses rather than like, no, I have no feedback for you, if you ask for their advice. Advice feels different than feedback. So I was wondering if you have any advice for me on how I might be able to do X, Y, and Z differently, or how I might be able to communicate with this client more effectively. Asking for advice is way more, it's less scary is a better way to put that, from a giving perspective than feedback, because feedback kind of has this like inherent undertone that has to be critical feedback for improvement, whereas advice is like, well, this is what I do and this has worked well for me in the past. So ask for advice. That's my advice.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm having problems figuring out where we are in this stream here. What have we done so far? We got
So I think we're going to go down. I think
Rourke was talking about the Joker vibes thing. Did we?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have someone who said, I was thinking about altering my name on my resume to defeat the AI monster. There's pros and cons to that. There was research done on resumes that were identical that changed the first name, and they found that there was bias towards certain resumes versus the other.
No.
Just interpretations of the name.
Aloysius J. Bamberger the 14th. Yeah.
Versus John Smith. Yeah. So that can be helpful. And at the same time, it's, if you change your name, and then you are actually applying, like, you have to do the background check, and you have to submit all your formal documentation if you get the job and your name doesn't match, or they're calling you by a name that doesn't match your resume during the interview process, that kind of, at least from my perspective, starts you off on the wrong foot by saying, like, I wasn't honest about who I am to begin with. Now, one thing that you can do is, maybe it's a nickname. I go by Abby, but my formal name is Abigail. And like, that's no questions.
But you can call me Francine. Yeah, that kind of thing.
I actually go by my middle name, which is completely different than, like, that happens. So changing your name on your resume certainly can have its benefits, especially if you're experiencing bias because people are choosing you because they assume things about you based on your name. At the same time,
I go by my middle name too, Kermit. Yeah.
it can get a little bit out of hand.
I mean, I know you're not supposed to say this, but I would have thought that's self-evident. Like, if you give a name that's not your name, and then they have to do some kind of verification on who you are, obviously you are going to run into problems. Like, you would have to have a very clear kind of explanation, for why your name doesn't match up to what your name actually is. I mean, I've never heard of that. Is that something that you've encountered, Abby? Like, people change their name for the resume?
No, I mean, really, the research done on it is more to prevent bias. If I have someone who sounds a little bit more similar to me versus someone who sounds very different from me, I might feel more drawn to the resume that sounds more like me, even though they're identical, just the name is different. This comment specifically says to defeat the AI monster. And I I'm not sure how like a applicant tracking system where that AI might come into play would kick you out based off of your name on your resume. So my advice
Maybe if
typically
they
is
detect
to
you're
not.
Irish, then I can maybe understand that. But anything else, yeah, that would be a concern.
Yeah. So my advice typically is you don't want to falsify information on any of your application documents. And if you change your name to something that is not even remotely justifiable, then, you know, I wouldn't recommend doing it.
It's always good to get questions you've never encountered before. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's interesting.
Yeah. And that is
Um,
the first time that's come up for us.
yeah. Here you go. Thank you, Abby. I have to implement that into my one-on-one meetings. Right on to Michael. Um, what can you tell about the Indian IT sector? Not a whole hell of a lot. I'm not
No,
in India,
not
unfortunately.
in India, and also not an expert necessarily in IT. If you want some input on the status or the like current state of the Indian IT sector, I'd recommend talking to people who are in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to
And
the LinkedIn or use your network and start to explore it from the people who are actually working daily in that industry, to get a feel
and
for
IT can mean anything from like customer service on the low end to
it.
like,
Hmm.
highly complex system admin and data center management, like at the high end, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a huge thing, right? And there's going to be a lot of different stuff within that operate completely differently. So,
Hmm.
so learn about it. I would say, like the blanket answer I give here, and I'm going to give to a lot of things is, like learn about networking, learn about how to reach out to people that are in the situation you're in, people that are like one level above you that are like maybe hiring people like you, being able to learning how to get and conduct an informational interview can be tremendously valuable,
Yep.
because out there right now there exists the knowledge that you're looking for, like the secrets of like how to succeed in your situation and do the thing you are wanting to do. People know this, it's locked up in people's heads, and it's just a matter of connecting with those people and getting them to speak with you, and you can learn those answers. So that's a tremendously powerful skill. So also learn about that. I think
Yes.
most people would benefit from it. Amazed says, ask for advice. Thank you, Abby. I could definitely use that advice on my new job now.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Yeah, getting feedback from your boss. That's what we're talking about. Very, very useful. A lot of people don't do this, but it really signals that you are one of the outstanding employees if you do this, right? You
Yes.
don't need to be told, you seek it out.
And a way to demonstrate that you are like this during the interview process is by asking the hard or the hesitation question at the end of your interview, which most people are afraid to do because it's essentially asking for feedback about your interview during the interview. So, my favorite way to ask this type of question is based off of what you know about me from our interview today. What do you think my biggest challenge would be if I were to step into this role? And then they have to say, okay, well, based on what I know about you, this is, it seems like you might be lacking skills in this area. And it would be, you'd have more success quickly if you had these specific skills. Or, so they might give you direct feedback about yourself and your experience, or they could give you feedback about or insight about the team that you could be joining. Well, the team is really struggling right now, and we've had a lot of turnover. So then they give you some insight into what might be going on currently with the organization, the department, the team, etc. So I always recommend asking that hard or hesitation question, which I have a bajillion videos on, at the end of your interview, because it demonstrates that you are going to actively solicit feedback, which is incredibly valuable from employees.
Yeah, like you bring up a good point, Abby. That question that they ask in job interviews when they say, "Do you have any questions for us?" That is a standard job interview question.
Yep.
It flies a little below the radar, because that's not the first question that leaps to mind when people think of like job interviews. You're thinking more about like, tell me about yourself and, what are your salary expectations? But do you have any questions for us? This is every bit a very useful question because people seem to think it's about like getting legitimate answers to things you're genuinely worried, like wondering about. right? That's what's self-evident. You think, oh, they're asking me if I have any questions. Okay, I'll ask questions about things that I'm genuinely curious about, right? But what you may be less tuned into is the fact that just like every other question in a job interview, that question is a performance. Like how you respond to it is a performance.
Yeah.
So like Abby's saying, what you choose to say there is going to be signaling things about you. So if you're kind of tuned in to like, I'm the type of person that, I want to work with my manager and seek out feedback and really try to do what they would have me do. That's important to me.
Yes.
You're signaling that that's the type of person you are by choosing to ask that question. You know what I'm saying?
And
As
if I
opposed
choose to ask a question like, well, what does the time off look like? That signals something very different from what is your favorite part about working for this organization?
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, you're the type of person, where your head's at right now. You're thinking of, okay, like, when are my breaks? How do I'm thinking about vacation. I'm thinking about not being
Not
here and
being at
working.
work.
What does that say? What's the assumption that they're going to make about you based on the fact that you choose to ask that question instead of like many, many others you could have asked, right?
Yep. And I posted in the chat, this definitely will show up on my live stream as well as my Twitch live stream. But I have a playlist all about questions to ask at the end of an interview. So head over to my channel if you haven't already. I've got multiple videos on those different types of questions to ask.
Yeah, if you're watching this on my channels, because this is going out live on 2 of my channels, check out Abby's channel. It's called Life Work Balance. I'll get this off the screen so you can see Life Work Balance. And if you are watching this on my channel, her YouTube channel is linked below in the description. So
Yes.
you can just get to it that way.
And if you're watching from my channel, same thing goes for Bill's. Check out his content. We're like adjacent to the kind of content we provide. So we have some very similar content and then some very different content.
Yeah. We have some overlap, but we also kind of talk about different things, and we also, have different perspectives on things, and that's good. You shouldn't listen to, in my opinion, you shouldn't listen to any one person for advice. You should go to a cross section of people and get a more sort of broad sort of set of advice.
Agreed.
Just in general.
Yep.
Okay, where are we in here? That was
Putin's cat again. So it comes down to the name changing thing on your resume. So they said,
okay.
I would alter the last name to something close to my real name and then blame on spell check. Okay, that even pulls me closer to the don't do it side of things.
Yeah.
Because in most jobs, they're looking for someone who also has high attention to detail. And if you miss something as simple as misspelling your name on your
I misspelled my own name. What kind of first impression is that going to get
Don't
people?
do it. Don't do
I
it.
misspelled the word job on my application.
Yep. So those sorts of things will come back to haunt you. Very simple typos that it's like a real word so that your spell check doesn't catch it, but clearly not the right word. That, any job will probably judge you for that at some level.
Yeah, it sounds clever, but I don't think it's going to get you the outcome you're hoping for. I mean, everything works sometime. That's the problem. Like maybe that will work some, but I kind of agree with Abby. In the majority of situations, that's probably not going to further your cause.
Yeah.
Tejas, if you say that, what your opinion about the videos which can tells answers during the live interview?
Yeah, and I think
ours are awesome. Abby's and mine are both awesome. Everything that we say in our videos is top notch. Go watch all of them, and you will be fine. That's what I have to say.
Yes, and their next comment I think clarifies. They were thinking in a live interview, they use an AI program that gives you the answers. And so it's so funny. I'm kind of on the fence about this because interviews are such a artificial environment anyway, that it could always be helpful to have a tool that's like providing you live feedback on how you might be able to respond. At the same time, it is likely vague. It is likely not specific to your experience. And because it's in the moment, updating, telling you to say this, it's very hard for you to remember what you said in the interview to then be able to reiterate, back it up, justify, etc.
That
So
is an awesome idea, by the way. I
yeah,
wish I could get that, like in a past life. I wish I could have got that for business meetings. It's like you have an AI that's like listening, right? It's
yeah.
doing the speech to like the speech to text
Mhm.
input kind of thing, right? And then it's like whispering in your ear, like the output, it's sort of saying it in natural language, like
Yes.
how you have the news anchors and they got the little earpiece, right? They're kind of doing this, right? Yeah, it's like, there's the answers coming in live, right? What this person
Yep.
said. Tell me about yourself. It's like, okay, say my name is, uh,
Yes.
I think
Don't
that's
do it
fantastic.
though.
It's the beginning of the end for humanity, but it's a fantastic tool in a
Yeah.
job interview.
And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people justify the use of it because it interviews, you might have thousands of interviews that you do, and is all based on the right answers that you say during the interview process. But I also think, again, this will come to bite you um, in the end. It will catch up to you if you use generated content that is vague. Even if you like input your resume and you have it try to generate like a response based off of your past experience, the hardest part is that you're not going to remember what you said to a question 5 minutes ago unless you like scroll up and look at the text that had generated for you, and then you're like delayed. There's so many things that could go wrong. So I don't.
Do you guys remember Siskel and Ebert? I'm sort of like dating myself here, but like, movie critics, and they'd give like a thumbs up or thumbs down. So Abby, I think you're giving it a thumbs down. You're saying like
Double thumbs
AI,
down.
yeah, thumbs down. I'm gonna sort of play devil's advocate. I'm gonna say, you know what? This is a fantastic idea. And what I would do if such a tool exists and it's convenient, if you were doing an online interview, I'm going to level with you. I would run this tool in the background if I could and have it listen in to the questions and have it like giving suggestions kind of down the side of your screen or something like that, And for most questions, I wouldn't rely on it. But if they ask me something that was just like incomprehensible, like it stumped me.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that mean? What the hell do you say to that? Like if it just stumped me and I had like that tool going in the corner, I confess, I think I would probably use that to give you like, okay, instead of saying, I don't know, I would read what it says and consider saying something along those lines or using it to like jog your mind and say like, they're asking about this. You
Yeah.
should answer about this. Like, okay, gotcha. Like,
Mhm.
thanks for picking up on that. I probably would use a tool like that if I had access to it.
Yeah.
And I
And
would use it in every aspect of my life. I would have that in an earpiece when my wife talks to me about, whatever something, and I have no idea what to say. I would listen to its suggestions, might get you
you're
out of
right, honey.
some
Great
trouble.
suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah. So thumbs up for me on the AI thing. I
Yeah.
never thought I would say that, but that's what I feel.
Well, and I think again, a lot of people are justifying using these sorts of tools because they feel like the interview process is already so unfair and swayed one way versus another that they should just be able to give themselves whatever leg up as possible.
Yep.
And it's such an artificial environment, like who really cares what is exactly said in the interview? I think what is dangerous is if you don't retain what you shared during the interview with these types of responses, because then they can quickly catch you in the lie or misinformation, and that will get you kicked out of the consideration process faster than anything else.
Yeah. It's like employers want to put candidates on a level playing field. They want to like compare you side by side in this, I would argue, almost artificial way. We want to compare apples to apples. We're going to assume everyone is the same. We're going to try and keep all these things constants and then look at the variations and then have a conclusion based on that. And candidates have the opposite incentive. They want to use every advantage to get a leg up, to outmaneuver the competition, and they don't want to be compared side by side. They want to have
They want
an
to stand
unfair
out.
advantage.
Yeah.
That's what networking is all about. Networking, I'm going to get the job because of all the candidates, they know me. Everyone else is a stranger. You really don't know what you're getting, but they've worked with me for 2 years already, and I have that trust. Does that mean I'm the best choice? Probably not, but in real world situations, the way humans make decisions, they'll kind of go for you and they'll say, well, hey, I know you and I know you're not crazy. I know you're not, you know, lying about every single thing on your resume. So, you know, that you know, certainty, or that minimizing of the uncertainty is worth something to me. And I'd rather choose you than take a chance on someone who could be brilliant, but then again, you really don't know because they're a stranger, you know? So those are the opposite incentives. So I think a lot of jobs, they're always going to be pushing for any kind of tool or any kind of thing that will give them an advantage. I'm not surprised to see people really taking interest in some of these tools.
Yeah,
I
me
think some of
neither.
them are quite fascinating, you know?
Yeah. And what I like about these sorts of tools is it then forces the interviewers and the hiring managers to be even more strategic about what they're doing during the interview process so that they can ensure that whoever they're interviewing is a real person or has the real experience, and that they're actually picking the person who's the best fit for the job based off of experience and qualifications and fit, not just their own biases.
I mean, the thing is that I find that this topic, it's
Mhm.
very fuzzy. You know, it's like, would you consider a candidate who used spell check to be an unfair advantage over a candidate that wrote their resume or their cover letter or something and did not have access or whatever to spell
That's
check?
a great metaphor,
You
I
know,
think,
yeah,
comparison.
like, and it's like, okay, it might be kind of a silly example, but it illustrates the point. What about Google? One candidate had access to Google when they drafted their answers or whatever to like a written evaluation or something. Another one didn't. Like, would you consider that that's a reasonable tool that everyone should have access to?
Yes.
Or no, that's cheating if you use Google. I want to know what you know without access to the internet. You know,
Yep.
so then it goes to AI. And now we're all thinking AI is this like big, weird new thing. But like 10 years, 20 years from now, it's going to be the equivalent of spell check.
Mhm.
You know, it's like, what's the big deal? It's AI. AI is everywhere. We always use it. Why would you not use it? You
Yep.
know? So
And I do, well, I haven't used any of these tools myself because I haven't interviewed because I
neither have I, to be
find
honest.
a
Yeah.
job. I have seen videos and things on the internet about these types of tools existing.
Yeah.
And so if you have used them, let us know how it's worked out for you in the comments, because that is, it's an area where, while I'm giving it a double thumbs down right now, I'm also open to being swayed to its usability and feasibility during the interview
Yeah.
process.
It could go both ways. I mean, there's definite pros and there's definite cons
Mhm.
with both option here. Like that's the thing. That's what makes it interesting. So
Yeah.
okay, we got Alan doing this,
Yes.
right?
And then they also, that same person asked another
Okay.
comment that said, "Where are you taking these questions from?" From the comment
I'm
section.
taking it from you.
Yes.
You, my friend.
So
You're
if
here.
you have questions or comments about the stuff we're talking about, or your job search or your career change, whatever it is, put it in the comments on
Yeah.
either of our
This is
screens.
going out live over multiple channels. So wherever you are watching this from, you guys are sending in comments and we're seeing all of them displayed here. You may not see all of them in wherever source you're, whatever feed you're on,
Mhm.
but we see all of them here. So that's why you might not see them, but we're actually getting all these questions.
Yes.
I think this was the next one. Hello, sir. I want some information about business management like a supervisor. Okay, well, I have a new live stream starting on Friday where we talk about business stuff and how to manage people and things like that. So you might want to stick around for that on my channel. Um,
The next
but
comment, if you scroll below my
okay.
playlist links, Tejas also had another question: is 2-column resumes, are they rejected by ATS? And the question, or the answer to that question, is yes.
Oh,
Two
there's a
column
lot.
resumes are more than likely going to be rejected by ATS because ATS reads your document like a book, top to bottom, left to right. And so if you have 2 columns with different information, it's still going to read the same information, like in both columns, in one line. So it might say contact information and then like your professional summary topic, and it just combines the sentences and then it gets all confused and it just doesn't work. So single column format if you're applying to jobs online. If you are going to an in-person interview, you can bring a more creative design looking resume that you can hand in person, but any online application, have it be a single column.
Yeah, keep it simple. Keep like that traditional boring resume that
Mhm.
we all thought would be gone by the year 2000. Well, it's back with a vengeance because it's simple.
Mhm.
No graphs, no multiple text boxes
Don't
all
have
around.
tables, don't
Yeah,
use
yeah.
colors. Yeah, the applicant
Anything that
tracking
could be
systems
read
are
by a
actually
computer.
not as smart as we would hope they would be.
Yes, absolutely. Um, Michael says, in your opinion, what is the purpose of a one-on-one meeting weekly with your manager? Well, we just kind of talked about that. Now, weekly, for a lot of employees, that might be a little overkill,
Yeah.
personally, unless they really don't trust you. A lot of large corporations, a lot of large enterprises, the environment is one where they really don't trust their employees. They want to, what's the opposite of empower? Like de-empower. They make you ask for approval for every little thing, and they get permission for everything. It's the opposite of a lot of small company culture where your boss just physically can't stand over your shoulder and watch everything you do, so they have no choice but to trust that you're going to be out working, and they can't see you, and they just trust you're doing your job.
Yeah.
um you know
Well,
what I
and
mean?
Michael's next comment says, my boss trusts that I manage and complete all my tasks. Sometimes she cancels our meeting 2 weeks in a row, which I'm fine with because we're both busy. So I would say, usually, if you're having a weekly one on one check in with your direct supervisor or your manager, it usually is weekly when you first start. And then sometimes we just get a recurring meeting on our calendar that we just don't get rid of. And so I would say you are probably in a position where you could suggest meeting less frequently, and maybe even having like an agenda that is a common thing. Like, here I'm going to talk about what I'm currently working on, the things that are coming up, and the things that I've completed, and then have kind of an open discussion section. And so I would say, if you have a meeting that's scheduled weekly, you feel like it's too much, your boss also probably feels like it's too much if she's canceling it sometimes 2 weeks in a row, suggest, would it be possible if we rescheduled our meeting to be once a month so that it's a better use of both of our time?
This is something I've spoken about a few times, actually. Like, I did this when I was a CEO. It may be a little bit kind of overkill for this, but I had like something like 8 direct reports, and what I did is I scheduled 8 meetings, like one on one with each of my employees every week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was technically, it was an hour. Wouldn't run to an hour. It would be like half an hour, if that. But it was, the purpose of it was great. First of all, it was an investment in the people. And the other thing is that, like, someone's commenting here, sometimes they cancel it. uh, I would not do that. I would not cancel it, because if you schedule a one-on-one meeting with your subordinate, whatever, and then you keep canceling it and deferring it, it signals a lack of respect. That they're not really important to you. If you want to show people that they are important and they do matter, and you take meeting with them very seriously, um, and so you would not defer these, you would not cancel them. And what they would do is, would be a closed door meeting. So they come into my office, they close the door, and it's a two-way communication. So they can tell me what they think, about stuff. They can tell me what they see is going on, their opinions about different things. No one can hear, just between them and me. And they can gripe a little, or whatever, or point out concerns. And then I also have the opportunity to sort of communicate to them and say, like, well, maybe you're not quite understanding, like, certainly where I'm coming from when I'm asking you to do this. This is what I'm seeing, and this is where it's coming from, and this is why I'm asking. And that can help with things. It also makes people feel like they're listened to, and because you're giving your time to them. So it serves a lot of purposes all at once. You know what I mean? Now, this may be total overkill for, like, if you're in like a just entry level job, or you're right at the worker level or something. You might not even want to talk to your boss at all. If you can get through the day without not seeing your boss or having to talk to them, I mean, you probably think it's a good day.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever. But this is what you could use these things for. If you have concerns, if you have, like, I don't understand why we're doing this, it doesn't make sense to me. If you could help me understand why we're being asked to do this, then I would be able to support it more, something like that.
Yep.
All of that are legitimate uses for, like, this one-on-one time that you can have with your boss. So
Could not agree more. And I think in most cases, the one-on-ones, while they are on work time and will likely discuss work things. It's an opportunity for you to build rapport and relationship with your direct supervisor, because the number one reason why people quit their jobs is because of a bad relationship with their supervisor. So if you
Absolutely.
have frequent contact with your supervisor, you're checking in with them, not only about work stuff, but maybe you have something going on in your personal life that is impacting how you show up at work, and they're aware of it. They might be able to help you reorganize your priorities or take some things off your plate, or, like there's just many benefits just from a cultural perspective to have these frequent one-on-ones. And when I say frequent, once a month, maybe every other week if you're have a lot of stuff going on. But it gives your manager a time to kind of understand what's going on in your world, maybe you to understand what's going on in their world, and then also build that relationship and rapport. And so that's why I think being in a position for, more than 6 months, you're probably in a place where you can ask for less frequent meetings, but then also ask your supervisor what they would like to get out of these meetings so that you can be prepared, or maybe they want to prepare the agenda, or maybe you prepare the agenda. Having that type of communication about these meetings also will improve their effectiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing. Ashlyn, most jobs say they prefer a college degree or job related experience. I have 10 plus years of experience. Wondering if my lack of degree is the reason for no job offers or the job market is bad. It could go both ways depending on the details,
Yeah. And I would say if the job that you're applying to says degree or related experience, they shouldn't be disqualifying you because of your lack of degree. In most cases, experience is more valuable, in my opinion, than the degree. There are certain jobs that require a degree, a medical doctor, a lawyer, things like that. But in many cases, if you have practical real world experience, that can sometimes outweigh the theoretical foundations you get from school, especially if you had gone to school 10 plus years ago. The information you learned in school may be outdated with technology changes, or rule and regulation changes. So there's a lot of things that can change with that. And so I would say if their job posting specifically says either or, you should be fine. You should not be disqualified from that.
Abby is correct, I believe. I also want to point out that the opposite of that may be true also sometimes. I mean, how many times have you been talked down to by a boss who thinks they know it all because they themselves have the same experience you do,
Yep.
only they had it 35 years ago, and what's unbeknownst to them is that it's completely changed since then. So they think they know it all, but you know that like their experience and what they're asking you to do is just completely out to lunch,
Yep.
The other thing is that depending on what we're talking about, education is pretty damn important.
Yes.
For some things, Abby is absolutely correct. Experience trumps learning the theory about it. If you've done it and you've achieved real world results, who's to argue with you? Other times, education is really the thing that gives you the understanding. You may
And
shadow someone and see what they do, and then you copy it, but you don't know why they're doing it that way as opposed to another way. And the only way you have to learn is do trial and error. And you try it a different way and you go, oh, that blew up in my face. Now I know why we don't do that. Someone who has the theory might have a distillation of millions of people's trial and error over like 300 years,
Well, I
and,
think the same is also
you know,
true for, you said you have someone who has 20 years of experience and they think they know everything compared to your two. Same thing goes for education. I think a lot of people that I've worked with have had to help them realize from a hiring manager perspective that education also isn't everything. They're very judgmental. If this person doesn't have the education, then they're not qualified for the job. You're
absolutely.
going to
Yeah.
have it from both sides for sure. My thought is if the job posting specifically says either or, which most are starting to get that way, then you shouldn't be disqualified or not considered because you don't have the education or even the experience, because both are extremely valuable.
Yeah, speaking as from the perspective of some job seekers that do have like education, they do have
Mhm.
like a certification or something. It's a very condescending thing to hear like, oh, we're looking for someone with an accounting certification. or equivalent experience. What is the equivalent of an accounting certification?
Yeah.
Like we're looking for someone with an engineering degree or equivalent experience. It's like, what is the equivalent? Oh yeah, that's fine. I'll take someone who's got a medical degree to do heart surgery on me, but I'll settle for someone who doesn't have a degree, but they have the equivalent experience.
Yeah, they've watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy, and so they
Yeah,
are just
exactly. And they've performed surgery on 1,500 cats, but that's fine. They can work on me any day. This is an example of where these conversations could go, and I'm for one, I'm happy that it's gone in that direction.
Yes.
But yeah, like, listen, it's a very generalized thing. And depending on what specific job you're in, usually it's going to be some combination of experience and education that really gets you there,
And if you are, this is the thing to keep going back to, is if you're going to be working for an organization that judges you for not having something that they said was an okay thing not to have during the job interview process, do you really want to work there? And so if they are saying, oh, well, we said you could have a college degree or equivalent experience, and then you get the job and then they judge you for not having the college degree, that's probably a toxic environment they're going to want to leave anyway.
And why does that happen? It's usually because one individual was in charge of the original sort of promise to you, and then another individual now is in charge of you now assessing your performance, right? They have two different worldviews. The first person had a degree or something. The second one doesn't, but they have a lot of experience, So you get these two different standards. How can we navigate this? Something we talked about earlier, I think, is the key: communication. If you talk to people, and especially if you have like sort of one-on-one kind of private conversations, you can help sort of, connect with people and have them see, like, look, I don't have a fancy degree like you do, but I have had this experience and this is what it allows me to do. Maybe you're, perhaps judging that unfairly when, it seems so simple now that you have a degree, but you haven't actually done it, whereas I have. Maybe we need to talk about that, kind of thing. So communication always helps bridge some of these gaps.
It does.
How do you say that? Sophology. Yeah. Hello, both. And that's an awesome picture. You look like a pro there with a pro shot. Hello, both. Abby, I'm really excited to see you live. I've been recently preparing for interviews after a recent layoff, and they've been so helpful and encouraging.
Great. So glad to see you here.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great feedback to get. So thank you to Sophology. If I have a problem in saying that. How do you say it?
I was going to say Sophology.
There we go. That makes a lot more sense. I'm terrible with names. Always have been, always will be. Putin's cat. That's awesome. Is that like Schrodinger's cat or like Putin's dog kind of thing? Or Pavlov's dog and Putin's iguana. I was going to do the name thing to see if I get more hits. I'm not seeing as much activity as 2 years ago, and I can't think of difference. You could change your name to Elon Musk and put that on the resume and see if that influences the outcome. And I can't think of any difference other than economy, competition increase, or my name and AI. You're looking for logic. A lot of times these things aren't logical. They're people's opinions based on their worldview, which is based on God only knows. You know what I mean? That's what you're up against.
Yep. It's a complete luck. It is the roll of the dice. Yeah. And I think my kind of follow-up to that is how much networking.
Point that way. Listen to that woman. She's absolutely correct.
My question is, how much networking have you done? That is usually where these sorts of situations where you feel like you've just done everything you can, things just are not working out the same way they used to. If you have a network you can rely on who could make some connections for you, that can change the game significantly.
Absolutely. Adam says, curious why you think or assume that the ATS is searching for your name rather than the skills you bring to the table. Why do you assume that it's not? That's what I want to know. What have you got to hide, Adam?
Well, and my other thought is like, maybe you get blacklisted from an organization for some reason and they say, do not push this application through if it has this name. That might be something that could be happening. I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think recruiters have enough time to be that specific.
Yeah, I would not assume that that's not a thing.
Yeah.
I can well believe that people are doing this kind of thing. I think it would be much more nefarious than what has already been discussed in this live stream. I think there'd be a lot of biases based on assumptions about who you are based on your name. I
Yeah.
would not be surprised to hear that that happens regularly.
Well, yeah, and there is that research that has shown that if you have a identical content on resumes, the only thing that has changed is the name. Their recruiters and hiring managers will show bias typically towards one over the other. And so I do know that organizations are working to make applications a little bit more anonymous in that like more computer review process before the interview process.
In that like never ending quest to try and like put everyone on that mythical level playing field. Yes.
Yep. So then it looks like we had some back and forth in the comments, and that the next question for us is from Matthew Wang. And they say, what recommendations do you have for a phone interview with someone I've spoken to before for a different job for the same company? So this is, what recommendations do we have if you're going to be talking to the same recruiter who's with the same organization you've interviewed with before, but it's for a different position? Bill, do you have any suggestions?
I got to parse the question here. I was just trying to read through that whole
Back and forth.
exchange. Yeah, there was quite a lot there.
Yes.
So what recommendations do you have on a phone interview with someone I've spoken to before for a different job for the same company that I had a phone? I'm assuming that if somebody rejects you once, they're going to reject you again. That's now I know that that's probably not universally true, but I think that that's definitely a factor. When someone looks at you and then they pass you over for whatever reason, I say they would have a higher likelihood of passing you over a second time. That's just my opinion. And therefore, you should pursue opportunities as much as possible where you're going to new people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's untainted.
And sometimes you can't control it. If I'm working for a large organization and my skill is in engineering of some sort or software development, then there might be a single recruiter for the software development team. And so we might not be able to avoid who we're talking to, especially at that phone screen level, because it's likely a recruiter. My recommendation is you're not going to just immediately assume that you're not going to get the job, but you do want to clarify why you're a great fit for this role that you're interviewing for. So, which is a great opportunity to do that during the tell me about yourself question, which is the first question that comes up during the interview. Now, if they are like, your name looks familiar. Have we spoken before? You can say, yes, I interviewed for this position.
No, we haven't.
It didn't end up working out. I'm really excited about this role. You can quickly skim over that past experience that didn't work out and talk about your enthusiasm and your fit for this next role that you'll be interviewing for.
Yeah, I do. Okay. Like if we're going to sort of create a hypothetical situation where you must go to this person, you know what I mean? Like fair enough. If we're going to sort of assume that we must go to the same person, fair enough. I still stand by what I said earlier. There's plenty of fish in the sea. I don't care how specialized of a background you have. You do have, whether you realize this or not, you have quite a large choice on how you present yourself, who you go to, what channels you go over. There's quite a lot out there. If you feel like you're really pushed into a corner and you have to go to the same person that you feel possibly might be biased against you because they did reject you before, for some other position or something, I would question that. I would say, like, are you really forced to go to this person? I would be amazed to hear that the answer is yes to that. Yeah. So I'm trying to encourage people to think, you have other choices here.
Yeah. Yep. And maybe you can, somehow contact HR and see if you might be able to get a different person to do your phone screen. That might cause more red flags. I would
interesting the justification on that one.
Yeah. I've already talked to the person.
No, they call me fat.
Discriminate against me. No, we don't want to necessarily go down that road. But
I don't trust them. They've got an Italian last name. Say no more. I'm picking on the Irish and the Italians. We got to get to one of these where no one is spared. That's the ultimate goal.
Right. This is a good question. I want honest opinion from you. Can AI really replace every sector? No.
Of course not. No.
Nope.
And it's not going to.
Nope. There are ways that things can be automated for sure.
Yes.
And things probably can be automated in every sector, but they're not going to completely replace it. The human element is very hard to replicate. And while there might be situations, like I don't know if this is completely true, but I've heard that like a automated vehicle driving will make a different choice than a human if they were to choose to get into an accident, because a human might choose to swerve, whereas an automated vehicle might just choose to crash into whatever object or other vehicle they're going to crash into, because it's done the calculations that it's going to cause less damage than swerving. But there might be some other situations where a human can avoid whatever crash might be occurring that the computer may not calculate. So the human element is not something that can be fully replicated.
The human driver will also make the decision to try and floor the vehicle while they're simultaneously drinking a beer and giving a thumbs up out the window with their other hand. That's the difference. Yeah, you've got to take that into when AI can replicate that. That's the world I want to live in.
Yep.
Okay, we're not there yet, unfortunately. We've got a long way to go. AI robots and kiosks can remove maintenance. Yes, look, go back to the Industrial Revolution, okay, and look at that. Like, what did it do? They invented machines, right? This is a time when, like, if you want to dig a hole, you got to get out a shovel and dig a hole. You know what I mean? If you wanted, like, to get water out of a mine, you had to take buckets and get 1,000 people and pull the water out of the mine yourself. And all of a sudden somebody invents a machine to do it, right?
Yep.
Like,
we have reservoirs.
Incredibly disruptive. Yeah. AI is just the latest chapter in a long line of things that have done that kind of thing, right? And does it change stuff? Yes, it's disruptive. It's the first truly disruptive thing, certainly in the last 25 years.
Absolutely.
We've seen ever since the internet. It's the first truly disruptive thing. So yes, it is going to change things at a rate and in a way that a lot of people are not comfortable with because they're not in control, right? But that's what every great invention does. The automobile did that. The telephone did that. Like, it's a long line of things. So, all I would say is go back and learn about that kind of stuff, and you'll see a lot of patterns emerging. And then you place that template over top of what's happening now, and it's following that exact pattern so far. That's all I can tell you,
Yep.
So anyway.
But our jobs are not going to be, or in sectors, entire industries are not going to be completely replaced. Yeah. Yeah,
there's going to be some replacement of jobs, but there's going to be a lot of other jobs opening up. It's disruptive and it's messy, and but that does create a lot of opportunities for people, Now, even if you don't like have a background in develop like AI coding or something like that, it's still going to create a lot of opportunities for people that come in and work like ancillary to AI and support what it does, in the same way that computers created a ton of like opportunities for people that weren't there before,
And by choosing not to learn how to use AI, you could actually phase yourself out of a job, because it can really increase the effectiveness of someone's role. It can streamline processes. And if you refuse to get on with the times of where we're moving, then your organization may choose to move on from you. Yeah,
I agree with that one. Even if you're not really into it, you kind of think it's this big negative thing. Just keep it at arm's length, but just sort of pay attention to what it is and how to use it and what it can do for you. It's kind of a good thing, so that even if you're acting purely in your own self-interest, you don't want to be labeled as obsolete or something,
Yep. This is a question from Joshua about taking resume format for the ATS. And if you have those narrow margins, the one just right above that you have selected.
Okay, here we go.
Yep. So does leaving the margins at narrow, essentially a 0.5 inches on all sides, make the resume unreadable by ATS? No, it doesn't. In fact, I recommend using narrow margins because you want to think about your resume as valuable real estate. So you want to use the space on your resume as effectively as possible. So if you have an extra ½ inch of space on all sides, you can cram more content that's more relevant to the job that you're applying to and interviewing for on that document.
Yes. We have only a few minutes left, so we're going to try and get through some of these relatively quickly. Adams, there's a lot of managers out there that have no business being managers. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the problems is that they don't really teach how to manage to people before they put them in charge of something.
Yeah.
That really is a part of it.
And many times, like leadership and management trainings aren't even mandatory. So you've got people who have no business being managers, who then don't think that they're bad managers, so they're not going to engage in professional development for their management and leadership style. So it just can be a total spiral.
I worked in an industry where I started out, where what they would do is they'd have like a work group, right? And you would rank almost the employees on, like, most productive to least productive. They would take the least productive employee, and if there was a vacancy for like the supervisor, they would put the least productive employee in the role of the supervisor. And the reasoning was that you're not losing a valuable person off the like the shop floor, basically the working environment. You're taking the least valuable person out of that role and you're making them the supervisor, as opposed to taking the most productive employee you have out of their role to make them the supervisor. That was the twisted logic that was employed.
Did it work?
It worked in that it was very effective in pissing everybody off and bringing everything to a standstill. But they stood by it. So, hey,
Interesting.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when nobody in the company has anything more than a high school education. But that's literally what they did. I could not believe that.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making a joke. That's literally what they did.
Wow.
It's a great point, Abby. It's happened to me recently in a job interview. Abby makes a lot of great points.
I don't remember what that point was, but thank you.
Yeah. Matthew says, to give you context, I originally met with a company at a career fair, and that's how I got the first phone interview. Career fairs are good for students and stuff starting out. Like it's a very useful thing.
Yep. And I would say it's unlikely that this person remembers exactly what happened or occurred during your first phone interview. So having a second phone interview with them isn't necessarily going to, be the reason you don't move forward again in the company.
Yeah. One new job I hear about and don't 100% understand is prompt person, being able to craft prompts for AI systems like ChatGPT. Is that like they know the right way of phrasing a question or a task so that it gives you the right output that you're looking for?
Yeah, and I think it's also like testing what certain prompts generate for you when it comes to the outputs. So it's not only being able to craft effective ones, but then to figure out how to tweak it to get information that's closer to what you're looking for.
It really seems like that, if that is a thing, that might be a temporary thing until they improve AI in the next couple of years or something. Like that's what it seems like. They're getting better at that. They just released ChatGPT 5, right? That was the big thing.
Yep.
So supposedly it's better at that kind of stuff.
Yep. And it can do like tasks and stuff that,
Yeah.
And really, there's a lot of. Oh
my God, we got even more.
I know we have a lot.
I didn't see all this whole bunch at the bottom here.
I know.
Let's go through this very quickly. We got like 2 minutes. Are Blockbuster managers homeless now? Technology will take? No, absolutely not. They've moved on, right?
Yep. So technology will take jobs.
Yep.
The Netflixes will come in and destroy the Blockbusters, but the people who worked for Blockbusters will continue to get new jobs and build their skills.
Exactly. Yeah. They were managers at Blockbusters when other people were nothing, so they have that advantage. AI is a tool that people put far too much faith in. I've tried to use it for resume creation ideas and to word things that has made flat upon false entries. Okay, well, time will tell if that's true or not.
Well, and that's why it's so important to recognize that AI for resume purposes and things like that is truly a very rough draft. So it's not something that you're going to use as a final document. It's just to give you some ideas, and it will hallucinate. It will create things that are not real based on information you did not give it. And if you were to just use that as your final document, things could not be turning out very well.
Just so you know, Rourke, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying, but they laughed at Apple, they laughed at Microsoft, they laughed at Google, they laughed at Facebook when those came out, and they were on their way up. They were laughed at and ridiculed right up until they weren't. You know what I'm saying? And that's how things happen. Things get better, and they're kind of a joke in the beginning, but they turn into something great. So you may be correct, about stuff. I'm not saying either way, but they may not be in the near future.
Yep.
So just beware.
But I think the very last question that we can go with is the second to last question from Rourke, which is second last comment, which is, could I go to a career fair even if I'm not a student? Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
There are career fairs that are specifically for students that are, maybe hosted by the college career office, again, for students. But there are also career fairs that organizations will put on, or groups of organizations will collaborate on. So just make sure that there are no requirements. Some of them might require a student ID to get in. And in that case, you're not a student, you can't get in. But in many cases, local governments will host career fairs. They will collaborate not only with local organizations, but also with the education sector. So career fairs are not just for students. They are for everyone.
And things that look like career fairs, but aren't, things like trade shows and other industry events. I mean, those are all gold mines for getting a job. They're all tremendous networking opportunities.
Yep.
Long story short, you should pay attention to them. I did a video last week, something that I had mentioned. I mentioned to Abby, the idea of doing a video of like, if I had to get a job, this is what I would do. So I did like a 45-minute video. I went through 11 different methods of getting a job. And one of those is events. And, we were talking about AI. What you can do is you can go to like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, whatever. You can say, listen, I'm located in this city and I care about this particular industry. What events are happening in my hometown with that industry in, say, the next 3 months? Like what? And, it'll say like, here, this is happening, this is, and it'll list like job fairs. It'll list like, university or school alumni stuff. It'll list industry association events and trade shows and other things. And like, a lot of those are great things to go to. You go there with a stack of business cards or even a handful of resumes. You start talking to people. There's a lot of opportunities that you can have come your way by doing that. So
absolutely.
So there you go. Anyway, we have to sign off. Thank you for everyone who participated.
Yeah, I loved how interactive the chat was today. So thank you, everyone, for your questions, for your comments, for your kind of side conversations with each other. I think that we had a lot of really good discussion today. And if you're watching from my channel, remember to check out Bill's channel. He, like I said earlier, we have some very similar topics. And then we also have some, videos on the same topic where we provide very different advice. So it's always great to get those different perspectives. He has some good courses if you're interested in taking some of those as well. And then,
and unlike me, Abby is a professional career coach. So a common question that I get is like, how do I get feedback on how I'm doing when I send in applications or when I go to interviews? How can I get feedback? How can I improve? And the answer, of course, is that it's very hard to get feedback directly from the places you're applying to. You need to get feedback yourself. And a common way to do that is to employ a career coach. Even just doing one session, it's a service I don't provide, but Abby does that. So go check out her services. She can help you work on your interviewing, on your resume creation, so that you will get interviews, things like this. She can explain the whole process to you, help you work on your personal charisma and other things we were talking about. So check that out. Go to her channel and check that out. It's linked below if you're watching this on my channels.
Yep. And in the description boxes for mine as well, you'll see all of Bill's information so that you can check him out too.
Perfect. And we will be back together, I think, in 2 weeks from today, same time.
25th of August.
Absolutely. Let me know what you guys thought. I did a zoom in thing. Normally we're like this, but today I decided to employ this. I know it makes all the difference in the world. Let me know if you guys have any feedback on that. And we will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.